Hi, I'm Andy Chang. I'm currently heading up Marketing Technology Engagement Solutions for Electrolux Group. Join me on the Forward podcast with Smart OSC. I'll be talking about marketing technology and leadership. It was a goddamn wake-up call, right? Because when everything was right, it seems to be in good harmony, and then you think that it's because of you're very good. But it's not, actually. You're just living on a credit. And then when the reality strikes, oh, sorry, but what I've known before has already, is no longer the case. What did I do wrong? When did I start living upon these credits? And I have to go back and reprogram that mind myself. And that's like in that loop. The benefit of AI will outweigh the disadvantages of AI.
Hello, everyone. You are very welcome to the Forward podcast with Smart OSC. I am your host, Aziza O'Byrne. But more importantly, we have a really exciting episode for you today because we are coming to you live from Bangkok with Model Creative and our very special guest, Andy Chang. Andy Chang, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners.
Thank you, Aziza. So first and foremost, really excited to be here. Finally, to see both all of you in person. So I'm Andy Chang. Currently working with Electrolux. Been with this place for 4.5 years. Heading up engagement solutions, marketing technology team, leading up the global organization. So I'm responsible for 4 different regions within Electrolux.
Brilliant. So one thing we've been asking our guests this season is what drives them forward. Mm-hmm. So maybe that will tell us a little bit more about you. What drives you forward in your life and in your career?
I think, very, very good question, right? I mean, always, Aziza, you always, hit me with all these deep thoughts.
We've spoken
from the get-go.
Yeah, we've spoken before, and we had a conversation before about how we love psychology and how we love deep thinking and deep conversations. So I think we're going to go right into that today. So there we go.
Absolutely. So what drives me forward? I think ultimately the pursuit of knowledge. And it doesn't have to be fixed, right? You always keep on pursuing that higher form of knowledge, and you go further and further at work and outside of work, right? And that's I think that we all of us have our aims, purpose, and that's of course each and every one of us are different, and to me it would be a knowledge that I pursued constantly, right? Yeah.
So you'd say you're a very curious person.
Yes, no, indeed. I mean, what do we know, right? I mean, we have our understanding of the world, but, at some point when you learn new things, you have to reorient your thoughts. Then it's all different once again, right? I mean, that's really excites me, that I feel the sense of a growing person, in this process, right?
You've been the type of person who learns a lot by doing, and looking at your career journey so far, you have come such a long way from your early days as a network engineer to where you are now in Electrolux. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about that journey to where you are now, that learning by doing, and what got you to where you are today?
Absolutely. It's funny because sometimes what life has to give you, is better than what you think you can get for yourself. And that's to summarize my 2 decades worth of experience. Everybody has a plan until they got hit in the face. And I always had a plan, and I always get hit in the face as well. That's a sense of humor that the life has to give you, right? So I started off as a network engineer, as you rightly mentioned. But, I think the most important part is when I have to give you a bit of a story before that happens, right? So I started off at the university picked the subject, computer science. I was literally a useless gamer. I mean, useful gamer, but if you, depending on how you're looking at, right? But as a gamer, you're useful. But if you're going to look at it from the lens of the life, you are useless, right? So I was that. But then one thing about gaming is that you have to build your own computers, and that really motivates you. Like, oh, you want to build the strongest computer ever. You compete against your friends. Like, I have stronger computer than yours. So that was the start of my computer appetite when I was pretty young at that time. So I picked computer science. I thought that it was about building this sort of hardware, like dealing literally with the electronic pieces and stuff. But then it turns out that after enrolling it and then started studying, it turns out that it's not about computer hardwares. It's to do with software. So that was entirely upside down. I mean, like, then I have to, I even went through the process of, deregistering myself and then re-enrolling it in a different way, because, if I really going to study what I wanted to study, that is under the computer engineering.
Yeah.
Separate field, right?
And it's a big time commitment.
Under the engineering faculty. Yeah. It's the whole I made a mistake over the whole faculty, by the way. And so turns out I'm in the information technology faculty instead. So yeah, okay, damn. Look, I live with my aunt, so she sponsored me and everything. So she's gonna definitely kill me, right? If I'm gonna have to deregister myself and do it over there, because like you literally have to lose what you paid for the whole semester. So yeah, I went ahead with it, and no worries. You know what? Like, study's never been my thing anyway. So then I started studying. Like, in my second year, I started to realize, didn't even know what software it was, and no interest in that. And then I was like, okay, so software is essentially a mind of a computer, where hardware is the body of a human, right? Like a body of a computer. And you can already relate to human body and human mind. I mean, like, your mind is very limitless. You can go, the moment you can go to the US, and then you can come back to Bangkok, and then you go back to the UK, and so on, right? That's how flexible your mind is. It's the same thing with computers. So literally the field of computer science opened up some of my eyes, and literally, okay, so this is it, right? If I knew, I would have picked this subject, right? So that's the thing, right? In life, sometimes it picks something that could be better for you than you think it was better for you before, right? So I went on with it. Like 2 years, 3 years down the line. But the challenge I had was, it was very practical, like logic, theoretical. And I'm always a practical guy. So if they taught me how the computer thinks, how you program it, and so on. Like without really me programming things, I wouldn't really know how it was like, right? So I struggle. Don't worry about it. I mean, like the third year, the fourth year, I struggled. The one that one of the only some subjects that I did well was the one with the practical view, right? Practically involved, right? Yeah. So I did my senior assignment towards the end. My grades were bad, to be honest, but I did that assignment. Like, probably I'm very proud of it even today. Like, one of the best that I could ever get. Like the GPA 4 person was actually asking me, Andy, how do you can you help me how to code this? So that you see that I perform in some areas that outperform in some areas that like the best people in the faculty has to even come to me and ask for my input and stuff. Like of course, right? Like if you try to balance things out, then I'm way like lower in terms of GPA than that person, right? Because then you are rated based on your GPA.
Yeah.
Right? This is again life.
But the doing was your forte, and I know that you went into this thinking potentially the programming sides, because you had one programming side that you were used to, which was the hardware side, and then you were brought into this new area. And when you were talking about coding, you mentioned that you thought you'd be this hacker with the hoodie in a room, and that was the expectation versus reality of where you went to.
Yeah, exactly. So that the thing about that, I mean, that's my sort of this side of phase where, once I graduated from the university, I was like, look, I did that, senior assignment with flying colors. I got an A, and, I was very proud. I was very pumped. And then I'm going to, okay, look, here comes Andy to the world, right? Like, I'm going to work. Started looking for a job. Then the reality is that, graduates, you all know, right? Like, you got to take any job that comes in front of you, right? You don't have a lot of choice. So I was very good at C# programming at that time. So like, it's a Windows application that I did, right? So like, yeah, okay, I'm going to write Windows application. I don't know, just, I can find some jobs. But the job that I got was PHP website programming, right? It was like boring. It's not fancy enough, like, yeah, but anyway, I need a salary anyway, like you need an income. So, might as well take the opportunity. That's where I got open up doors to the world of online. Which is to me a much more interesting space. I mean, I don't mean anything negative about people who write operating system applications and so on, but then, there are good things about it. But then, like, for me, I'm more interested in online, but I didn't know, right? You see what I mean? Like, I ran into that again. It's like, online, okay, fine. And I started writing websites and so on, right? Now, of course, I was introduced to, I move on to, then I was on the agency side. I was been hired by this agency, digital agency, to do a PHP programming, a lead developer. I found myself doing the coding and stuff over there again, and I code till the sun goes up, rise in the sky, and then that was, I was very proud of that. Yeah, like doing that thing. Like I was competing with others on things that I shouldn't be very proud of. But anyway, I was young and useless anyway, so I tried to. You see what I mean? Like, you have plenty of time, you have plenty of energy, you have plenty of emptiness in your head. So you go on, you do a lot of crazy things, and you get very proud of anyway, right? So I landed upon this project to put a grocery store online, and that was a good another experience that I got in terms of managing some people. It's not, to me, I have been given a role to manage people, but then I wasn't managing people. I was managing the project. I was managing my goal. I was managing the outcomes.
Yes.
Well, nobody told me what people management was like. Nobody taught me before. So I was doing the things that I thought it was correct. And then, I was literally surrounded by people who would, basically, hopefully, out of randomness, they would have share the same purpose with me. So yeah, I did, deliver that project, and then I was approached by a colleague of mine that I was working for a freelance job that I knew before, and he was like, Andy, we have an opportunity in this this company called Allianz. It's an insurance company. You can join me and work together. So I joined because I thought maybe maybe I can earn a little bit more. Maybe I can show my skill set. And to the point that you mentioned, I always thought that I was like that programmer with the hoodie in the in the basement. And the furthest I can see myself at that time was, well, the best I could do is I can show off other programmers how well I can code, how fast I can code, how organized I am, and these are typical values of being a programmer, by the way. But like like you could actually, you compete your logic against other folks and how well you know about things as well. But then you're living the trend. You see what I mean? Nowadays things are different, by the way. But let me not get into that.
Did you expect to get to where you are now? Did you expect that role?
No, not at all. Not at all. And that was, that's a good question, because as naive as I was, one thing I randomly made it right was I don't close myself to any opportunity that comes along the way. If I did, things would have been entirely different by today, right? So I was like running into any new opportunities. Let's grab it and see how that goes, right? Like no hard feelings. So I went on with insurance company Allianz, not knowing it's actually also very prestigious as well in Europe. I went there. I was actually find myself building this car insurance application. Extended warranty, like the luxury brands like Mercedes-Benz, BMW. These guys, they give you like 5 years of warranty, but then they also give you an extended warranty of 5 more years, 10 years, they would say, right? But at the end of the day, what the consumer doesn't know or do not know is actually behind the scene, they are re-subcontracting Allianz to ensure the other five years, the second 5 years of the manufacturing warranty.
There's a lot of orchestrating in the back.
They're making a bet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Allianz is making a bet on the 6 to the 10 year of the car, whether it will break down or not, right? But then that's the whole thing about the business, and I was actually building the application to operate that.
Wow.
And lots of nightmares. We a
lot of nightmares.
No, when I talk about it, it wasn't all about rainbows, butterflies, and walking in the park and the rosy road and so on. But it was terrible. It was. I wish I wanted to run, but I was literally thinking so many nights that I could have run back to the agency, because I had like 10 people team over there, and then I was still hoping that everybody would think the same way, had the same purpose, share the same purpose with I am. But turns out that I only had a luck back in the agency, but I didn't have a luck in Allianz, where I could see already some differences in the motivations and the team, and that was pretty tough.
That's a powerful statement as well, because a lot of times we can do that. We can just presume that people see the way we see,
yes,
that are on the same page, but it's not that, because every person has a different conscious, every person has a different way of viewing things.
Yes.
And as we go down the way, and I think this is going to come up later as well,
yes,
with your career journey, but now where you are today, there's more dimensions to your way of leading, which I think is so interesting, because you don't hear that honesty that often about someone going in and saying, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. I wanted to run because nobody could see the way I was seeing things too.
Yes.
And that brings a whole other level.
That was a goddamn wake up call, right? Because when everything was right, seems to be in good harmony, and then you think that it's because of you're very good, but it's not actually. You're just living on a credit. And then when the reality strikes, oh, sorry, but what I've known before has already is no longer the case. What did I do wrong? When did I started even, living upon these credits? The thoughts that are not true, right? You see what I mean? And I have to go back and reprogram that mind myself, and that's like in that loop,
You've been reprogramming yourself the entire journey, it seems. So it's actually quite interesting in that sense. I want to ask you, because that entire experience saying that this was disaster, what kept you going when you could have run back to the agency?
Very, very good question. I mean, I was very dedicated to what I always do. And I think at the end of the day, when circumstances hit rock bottom, that's where you find yourself. Okay, so what do we do now? What do we do now? It's almost like a sinking ship, like you have the lights on and then you're like, everybody's running around and it's like, oh God, SOS, SOS. And I was in that mode a couple of times in Allianz, but then, like, okay, so what do we do? It's like, yeah, you have to keep going. And then, you constantly find new meaning out of the failures, out of the brokenness you face. I mean, it sounds a little bit dramatic, but I think that we have to address it. We have to face, we have to be able to talk, openly talk about these things, because they do exist in everyone's life. It just says that, some people choose to talk about it, some people don't.
Yeah, I think there's a thing in the business world as well for a lot of people is actually saying, oh, this is a sinking ship, everyone.
Right.
It's really hard to say, because a lot of the time you don't trust your gut. And that's the best thing you have, is trusting your gut and knowing actually it's okay to say this is a sinking ship, this is a disaster. Does anyone else feel it? Because 9 times out of 10, if that's in your gut, everybody else is also feeling it. So it's there.
Absolutely. No, so I like when you mention everybody, not saying it out loud, but they were actually in the same state of mind with me. And that's where I started to understand the importance of relationship within the realms of leadership. Now, I didn't. Nobody gave me leadership classes. I mean, nobody even gave me a sense of the need to go and attend and study leadership. I mean, it's like, I was literally doing what I like to do, and that is practical. Yeah. Right? Like being practical, like we at the job trying to do it. But I didn't know at that time that I was actually doing leadership on the ground, right? Without having theoretical stuff, obviously. So, when you hit rock bottom, when your team was also like really in the disaster mode, like you kind of find a new meaning. Like, okay, so all of us are on a doom boat anyway, so you might as well, you see what happens on Titanic, right? They start to play, violin and so on. So I happen to build relationship playing violins at 2 a.m. in the morning. Your application couldn't be compiled because it was actually, like lots of bugs and so on. It was Java application. So you have to actually compile before you actually put on the production. And, what do people care from Europe? Because they're like, it's in, there's still like the time difference and 2 a.m. is like still in their evening. So they're like, have you put it on live? Have you fixed the problem? Yeah, we were playing violin.
We're playing violins. We're hoping for the best. There's people jumping off the boat.
And that was 2 months, 3 months. You were doing that project. Now that I'm gonna share it on podcast, anyway, because what happened was we were put against. So here's the thing. It was a little bit political.
Yeah.
Our teams were put against another agency. And, at that top, people make bets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me prove you that, this team in Thailand can deliver this unreasonable timeline, this unreasonable set of expectations put upon that project. If we are to do so, then we're going to be able to establish a technology hub in Thailand. I was so naive. I didn't know I was in that.
You're in that space. Early space.
Exactly. In the center of that.
Before you even knew it was.
Exactly. All I wanted to do was I wanted to show my skills.
Your
Right?
hood up programming
hacker
skills.
right? So
Can I ask from the worst projects to now the projects that you're the most proud of?
yeah,
Can we go to today? Because at a MarTech summit,
yeah.
I know you're speaking about something that you're working on now with Electrolux, which is one of your proudest moments, which was getting this personalization stack for customers. Can we talk a little bit about that, what that is? What was the trigger point for that? Because these always come with trigger points.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. So, like over long decades, after Ali ends, I also learned a lot about this leadership, open up doors to what is truly is. And it's, you see, sometimes when you learn things through theoretical stuff, then it actually, you get to leapfrog because, you already are learning from things that what other people already learn from. But the downside of that is you don't have practical experience, right? So you can't really relate to reality. I was the opposite. I always start from practical and then try to reach up to, okay, what does the theoretical stuff says? And I like to do that because I hate theory, right? And so that's my way of learning when it comes to leadership and, management of people, right? It's all about the relationship stuff. I think we will come to that at a later part of the discussion, hopefully. So a decade in between, and then I moved to Electrolux. And now that I've been leading the consumer engagement solutions, and, we did that, to your question, personalization initiative started off last year. What was the trigger point? We try to ask ourselves, what would it take for us to continue to be competitive on the market? It's a fair question, right? Because, nowadays, let alone be that you're trying to improve to be in a better state, maintaining your position is already hard enough, right? And we weren't really greedy about it. And we were trying, okay, so what does it mean to maintain our position? And we learned that, okay, look, the organizations who know their consumer very well and what their consumer are looking for, and spend your energy, spend your effort, all of that to those things that your consumer are looking for may give you a chance to hold your position. It may give you a chance. It's not a guaranteed, but may give you a chance, right? So we started off. Okay, so what do we need to do to achieve it, right? So okay, so we need to first of all ask our question: do we know our consumers? And you need to be true to yourself as well, right? Sometimes we live on the old assumptions, best practices, right? Like, hey, you know what? We've been doing that every
This is
time.
the way we've always done it.
Yeah, best practice. So we rely on best practice, but that's what takes you here won't take you there, and that's I like that quote because it really is that situation that we're in. Like we were heavily relying on best practices rather.
Was it a lot of gut and guesswork based on old school ways of dealing with data and customer information and just hoping for the best?
No, see, not even the data. I mean, data is to, well, I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Data is to, emotional support,
Is it your suit of armor?
I think who you are is defined by what you do. And we in the organization, who we are is defined by what we do. And what we've been doing is always relying on our best practices and then, using data to basically do the emotional support. See, there's a correlation between what we do and there's a data, right? But that's not the the actual usage of the data, right? So we were yeah, okay. So that leads to the point where we say, okay, so do we have enough data? We need to be relevant to our consumers. I mean, we started off investing on the e-commerce D2C and channel, right, online, selling directly to our consumers. But it's pretty much static, right? So we were selling products, but then like we don't really know if we are actually being very targeted and relevant. Like if you are a consumer, let's say, coming to the website and then looking for a refrigerator, and we might be ended up showing you a washing machine, so that's a sort of like we know that. So that's where the appetite around personalization kicks in, right? Like, okay, so do we have enough capabilities to do personalization on top of what we have? I mean, like, we're not doing just for the sake of doing it, right? On top of the e-commerce that we have, on top of the data that we have. So we started, architecting the, how the technology should look like, the whole full stack, and the way we organize, within our Electrolux, has a lot to do with marketing teams, tech teams, sales teams, and so on, but really orchestrated by the marketing team at that time. So, I happened to get involved as well in that space, right? Because I was leading the MarTech in the region, globally started off at that time. So yeah, I mean, we built, we had the CDP, customer data platform built on top of the data lake stack, but I could go on these, like fancy jargons, but the difficult.
Mainly, we're just not trying to give people fridges when they ask for washing machines.
Exactly. So comes the bit of the same situation in reality, which is not always fancy, right? When by the time we went into look into the data. Sufficiently, do we have sufficient data to do what we want to do, and so on? No, we didn't. We have lots of holes in our data. The data is incomplete. We capture. See, Electrolux have always been decentralized, right?
Yeah.
And we were trying to we're in that transformation to centralize more, simplify more. But because you come from that history, decentralized history, you're, everywhere you look into in your current state of work is decentralized, including your data. So your data, our data turns out to be that they're made for a very specific purpose, not for other things. So that, if you're lucky enough, maybe, yeah, you might be able to use it, but if you're unlucky, and most of the case you're unlucky, data is insufficient, you can't use it, so you have to go all the way from the beginning to capture the data in the right way, in the way that you would want to use it in your personalization journey, right? So we ran into that many topics, many challenges. But then, of course, we also learned that, we also get to see who we really are. And I think that is very valuable. Just like if you're on a diet and, you want to, really take care of your health and so on. And one thing that works for me, and I tried many ways, but like one thing that really worked for me is all you do is start tracking your diet for a week. Just track what you eat. You don't need to change it. Just track and see what it tells you. And we were in that state, we were started tracking what we, the data we have, what we do, and there are some useful information and so on. And we see a lot ourselves, really internal, like inward view, right? And we started to, it's also helped us to change the narrative within the organization. Like instead of repeatedly speaking about the best practices.
Yeah.
We then start to talk a little bit more. Data is a new thing anyway, so we started to talk about data a bit more included in our conversations, and that's the shift in the tone a narrative within the organization. I think these are the things that most fancy tech articles don't talk about, which I think they should talk about more, because that's the start of the change. And like, I think these, okay, I'm not criticizing them, but then like these,
Go on, say it.
you can't. That's a beginner problem, right? Every time you see what an Olympic champion is doing, and you're like, okay, you're pumped. You're gonna hit the gym and see what happens, and then everybody see what you do, and
you see the success first without the actual
exactly. But the success that is not within your reachable distance. What I think is more useful for people is, okay, there is this success, but then what are the baby steps, right? So you see, like, you have to walk before you run. People don't want to talk about walking. People want to talk about running only, where you're actually crawling at the moment, right? So I mean, see,
we were talking about this before. It was the whole, it's a marathon, not a sprint, in terms of the projects like this, what you're running with Electrolux, and how early it is in the roadmap. There's still so much to learn, but even just noticing that problem at the beginning with those great intentions to know your customers a lot better, to be able to serve them in the future, is something that a lot of people always get to at a late point.
Yes.
Yeah, where you're already there. So what are you seeing now? How is that?
Yes.
How is this project affecting the business now? What are the great points and the learnings that you're getting to?
No, that's a very good question, because it's almost like my personal journey. We were there with the hope of learning our consumers. We were like, okay, we got the strategy right. Like, you wait there, we got it right. Turns out that it's not about learning. Before you learn about consumer, you got to learn about yourself. What can you do, and how can you be part of this game? And so that obviously we ran into that. That was just right in front of us. We are in the process of learning more and more about ourselves. What are we still doing wrong that we need to fix, so that we are ready to run, right? Because we can only dream about running, but we don't even walk straight. Of course, we are in the process of hopefully towards the end of 2024, optimization, like improving the way we interact with our consumers. That's the next step, right? We're not there yet. We're not in the optimization step yet. We're here to still, like, let's say, discovering ourselves, how currently consumers are operating and interacting with us, right? It's not that easy, because you're talking about we're talking about enterprise level complexity. We're dealing with
global complexity as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We're dealing with multiple markets, dealing with multiple regions.
Yeah,
you have different cultures, you have different teams, different backgrounds.
And also, I am going to presume there's a whole lot of work within the culture of that as well, and creating a synergy between technology, people, marketing, everything in that sense too. So would you mind talking to us a little bit about that, and how important that has been, and what you've been learning in that space? Because we spoke about this before around the marketing function and bringing in new technology stacks. What have you learned?
Yeah, no, if we want to talk about marketing, I think that we should first talk about, I think the question is more about how marketing is working with other functions. And that has a precedence over anything else. I mean, I have a privilege to be sitting in the middle of the marketing team in Electrolux. So literally I can speak on my experience behalf. I mean, marketers are seeing, I think it's a bit of a love or hate scenario. This is a love and hate story, marketing versus others.
Yeah.
In an organization, marketing is seen as like a rich kid on the block. You have lots of money. Yeah, money.
Make it rain, everyone.
And you wear
No.
nicely.
Mm.
You seem to be, you seem to be smart. You seem to be do the talking more than do the actual doing.
Yeah. Are you an island in yourself,
Yes,
really, as well?
yes, and there's always a little truth to the perception.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of true. I think marketers are, they have to be creative. They're on that side of the game. They're very creative. They have new ideas and so on. But then people with new ideas and creativity not always are good at, execution, right? And I'm not saying marketers are not good at execution, but that's a bit of a psychology behind the strength of the teams, right? When you're talking about marketing versus others. So, I mean, I can't speak on other teams' behalf, but I can literally speak on technology teams' behalf. But
Yes.
and that's the challenge that most organizations face. You have a tech team, you have a marketing team split. Tech guys would say, these guys always tell stories, and you never get to come even closer to reality. And marketers were like, these IT guys, dude, they make me even less smart, literally, right? Like, I don't want to talk to them. In reality is that, look at an industry. Marketing can't live without tech. You can't. The modern way of doing marketing has to apply tech, full stop. To a point where some marketers started to be like, oh yeah, they're tech folks, and they turn themselves into a very tech savvy being, but they call it a wolf wearing sheep clothes.
The marketeers are the wolves.
Yeah, well, and nobody knows except if you're a sheep, the other guy is the fake one, right? And vice versa. So I was attacked. You see, I always project myself as a hacker in the basement.
Yeah.
When the guy is wearing, trying to be tech savvy, you kind of tell straight out this is actually real or false.
So going forward for any and this is going to be the thing, right? There's going to be very blurred lines between marketing, technology, and they will have to come together. So how do we integrate that better?
I think the talent is very important. First and foremost, you need to start by having the right talents in the team. It's not about having the right technology in the team. Start by, and a lot of times we have that we tell those lies ourselves, knowing that we kind of know that, but
this is going to fix everything.
Yeah, this is, let's bring in the new shiny tech and distract everybody. I think we got to be very, very truthful to ourselves within the marketing team as well. Start by the talent. Now, of course, when you have the talent, I think that another misconception that marketers have, within the team is that we try to bring in the talent, but then these are all solo players, these are like experts, like the ex-consultant or something and this and that, and they always have this illusion of trying to look smart in front of people is the main driver of hiring criteria. So I mean, look, it's important, don't get me wrong, but it's not just all that. You guys have to be able to work together as well. I think when you put smart people together and they're not aligned, then that's chaos. You don't make any progress, right? And I think what is even more important is we have to attract talents who who understand not just what they do, what they're good at, who understands how they can who understands other surrounding job functions as well. Right, you gotta. So typically, when we talk about marketing in tech, marketers, you have a higher chances of getting successful if your marketing team genuinely knows a bit about tech as well.
Yes, that's a great place to go.
Vice versa.
This literacy is a really important part.
Mm.
Yeah.
And tech as well. You cannot have like the best tech guys and drop them in the middle of the marketing team, and it's like, see what happens. Like it's the best way to get going crazy. Chaos.
Yeah.
If But then you have tech guys who knows a little bit about marketing, makes the life so different, right? And I think that's so illuminating when I was the marketing technology guy in the organization, because I get to see the both worlds, and I was like, okay, and look, the role marketing technology did not exist before
Yes.
in the industry,
and it's still in its very early days,
Yes.
which it's a space where a lot of people would probably presume you have all the answers. It's still very early, and there's still so much opportunity there.
Yes.
But it takes learning on action, which is what we've spoken about before. It takes a lot of testing and trialing together, and it's still in its early days of communicating together.
Yes.
And creating that literacy
Yes.
within the teams, and not having that expectation that everybody needs to know everything.
Yes. And that is so important, because I think that in some industries, you see different level of maturities. If you look at a racing, right, F1, like if you look into their F1 team, you have a driver, you have an engineer, but then the driver knows a fair bit of engineering as well. Like these guys, they know how the mechanics of engine works. Same thing, engineer knows how to drive pretty much, and so on, and they are all constantly talking to each other. Have we achieved that in marketing and technology? I would argue so, right? I mean, it's like we said, there's a huge difference between what the articles talks about and what really is happening within the organization behind the scene. And I really dare to challenge that in any organizations, right? That,
This is good. The expectation versus reality.
Yeah.
What is really being said out there versus what is happening behind the scenes. And I really want to get into that a bit more, because you mentioned this before. From a consumer perspective, you go into a shop, you buy something, you leave. Perfect. In today's world, there's so much more behind at the back of that shop happening. There's so many intricate pieces. There's so much, and not a lot of people know about that, and that's great for the customer not to see. But we as professionals in that space probably need to be more open about all of these things that are happening behind the scenes that are imperfect.
Yes. And it's perfectly normal to have a bit of chaos behind the scene. No problem. I mean, you don't need to have a perfect scenario behind the scene, right? But then, of course, you have to know what's going on. So, I mean, I think the best, to your point, right? I think that one of the future trends I really see as a consumer, what they're looking for is, it's nothing re-engineered. It's always been the case. Consumer like to be known by their name, and like to be recognized, their preferences individually, right? And of course, you got to have the product serving what the purpose of what the consumer is expected. That's obviously fundamental, but like talking about consumer experience, right? So I think that one of the examples that industries that are doing very well is, if you look at a luxury type of products, what they really focus on is like they really know their consumers. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to compare yourselves to the premium and being luxury domain, because they have they obviously have lots of money. They have a lot of investment power to drive that experience. Now I could argue though that if once you become a bit more mature with your operations and tech setup, you could mimic some of those behaviors using technology. So that it's not too costly for you, like you are everything is tailored, even like I don't know, like I don't want to mention that, but everything is handmade like Rolls-Royce. You don't have to do that. But at least mimic it. You could learn a lot from it. And that's where we should aim for. That should be our main, the North Star of, consumer experience, right?
What key considerations should teams have when they're looking to integrate a new marketing technology or expand on their current stack?
I think your question has the answer, or what I would say the most important answer within, because I think a lot of times we try to look for technology without having in mind how would we scale it in the future. And if you're in a startup business, maybe that's not something you always care about. If you do, then power to you. But in enterprise, it's essential. In enterprise, this is mandatory, because you literally find yourself, if your technology chosen isn't scalable, you have to start from the beginning again, right? And that's a beginner mistake. Now, before we go too much in detail about scalability, I think that picking a technology, you have a long list of checklists, and we have like this RFP document, which within IT we worship, right? And that's the thing I always say, like IT thinks the golden record they have is this RFP document, and if they can complete that whole thing checklist and they find the best technology, job is done. No, they forget about Mark. They forget about the organization. What about the project? They don't care about it. It's like, I have the higher score vendor, and they gotta go for it. Perfect, done, job done. And that's the scenario where I mentioned earlier about the the F1 team, because you have IT team who literally has no interest in the marketing job, so they're like, okay, my job is done, go ahead, do your stuff afterwards. And marketing team also tends to know that, unfortunately, so they will always try to avoid that. They will try to pick the solution, and that's the concept of the shadow IT evolves, right? Because they will try to decide on technology solutions and then later ask for the blessing from IT. Can you sign it? Because, we know what we want. And IT also tends to get a little bit frustrated about, right? It's like, they always do that. Second time is no problem. This is like, what, the fifth time? Like, they don't need us, right? They just need our signature, right? Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that sort of MarTech frustrations, but I think that picking a technology, what is other than scalability is important, is expensive technology does not equal success, right? And I know in enterprises there's a typical behavior of why we have even landed on this conclusion. Because I tell you why. If you pick a most expensive technology and still fail, that's not the technology problem, right? That's the notion behind it. So, I know I'm being I'm trying to, I'm not filtering here, but that's reality. And I say it without filtering, because I don't want people to acknowledge and, run into the same mistake again and again.
Mm-hmm. The definition of
exactly. You cannot get a Ferrari hoping that you will win the race all the time. What if you're in an off-road situation where you have to drive in the rain?
Yep.
What's going to happen to that Ferrari that is very expensive, right? Well, so maybe you might have a random success of hitting the right racing track with Ferrari, but then chances of happening that is almost close to zero, right? So, that's something to be avoided with expensive technologies. Yeah. But then, of course, the last, there's many I can talk about it, because I also share a little bit, a bit of that in my last conference, MarTech conference, back in October last year. And this is an IT thing, right? And we tend to choose a monolithic, like a system that does everything, and like, okay, you know what, like easy, less headache. We have one contract over 10 different contracts, less headache. We have one cost negotiation over 10 different cost negotiation. We have one vendor over 10 different vendors, less headache. So all of that influence the technology decision. It should never be that. So we ended up having a technology that we were sold that this could do everything. But when in reality is that we find ourselves using maybe 30% of that whole technology, the whole thing, right? You have the whole box, which nobody knows how to use this whole box. So, that's why marketing technology industry, if you look at hard enough, you would see that there are, more fit for purpose, the right size technology working together, modular. So if you find yourselves, if you outgrow, that works with your, not going into the most expensive technology from the get-go. You go with what fits your purpose technology.
Yeah.
Now, when you go with that approach, you then soon enough, if you're doing the right things properly over a year, you will soon enough notice that, okay, maybe what a year ago you have chosen is no longer facilitating what you're about to become. So that's totally fine. You plug it out, you buy another technology that fits your maturity. But then it helps because you have pieces of technology in your tech stack that you can do plug and unplug. Whereas if you go with the whole full box of thing that you don't even know what it does, then chances are that you have to replace the whole thing. Right? It's not going to work that way. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to highlight that, like there are consequences that follows, not just, what you see in front of you, but future consequences.
Yes. Yeah. And even that putting your hands up and knowing that that's okay. That's not going to do everything. One thing is not going to rule it all. Try again. Keep trying, keep testing, keep learning.
Keep learning. Yeah.
What I want to ask you is the emerging trends now that you're looking at and go straight into that.
Yes. So
look into the future.
There are many future trends. I think the loudest one is the artificial intelligence, right? I hate to repeat that because a lot of people have already spoken enough and brag enough about it, and are they going to replace human beings and stuff like that? Just Terminator is coming. No, no one knows for sure because I mean, if you want to talk about it, if we want to talk about it, we have to go back to this sort of like human civilizations and what is the level 2, level 3, level 4 civilizations. Then we will probably realize then maybe one day it will happen. But, we can't just talk about it and be frightened and anxious about it from now, because I think that, I give you an example. When internet was first introduced, I'm sure there's enough people talking about this because internet wasn't that mature enough at that time, so you don't really see that online material about people talking about it, but you see a lot of artificial intelligence talks on the online space today, right? But I'm sure people talk about it, that internet is not good, internet is
what's it going to do?
Change people's, it's going to take over some people's jobs and make some people jobless and so on. But it's all about disruption, right? Something comes up, you have to live with it. You have to find a way to work in accordance with it. I think that AI, though, one thing about AI to acknowledge is that AI, the benefit of AI will outweigh the disadvantages of AI. So it's coming, and that's we whether we accept it or not, right? So yeah, that's AI. I'm not here to talk too much about it, and that's at least I'm sharing this as my perception of who I perceive myself as a tech guy. Like I hope you can. It's somewhat useful because I've always been a tech guy.
Yeah.
Then the other trend that is within our reach, within marketing technology, space is the no code and low code trend that is coming. Now, if you look a lot in if you know about the history of programming, you can pretty much predict where this is heading. And I would try to talk up from this angle. Okay. Mm-hmm. In the past, when I started off, back in, I think it was around 2000 something. Let's say millennial, post millennial. There is already a boom. The emergence of object-oriented programming. This is a modern type of programming. But like before that time, way earlier, there's other type of programming. But like if you go like back enough in the history, you would see that programmers at that time, years back then, they were doing what we call it assembly language. It's this very very old school language, very tedious. It's like the least human possible programming language available on this earth, right? Very close to 1 and 0. Now, why am I saying this? Because I think no code and low code environment, what we're talking about here is that what we're essentially saying is if we get really to that point, we are no longer going to need programmers doing their coding. Maybe programs are intelligent and mature enough to do their own, organize themselves to do the coding.
Interesting.
Right? So I think this is the evolution of programming as well. So you're coming from assembly to object-oriented programming, and object-oriented to further down the whatever you can call it now that we're here towards the no code or low code. So like you have like very minimum code. That's the flavor that marketers are always looking for. Marketers don't want to work with tech guys.
Is that again looking at that literacy between both, or that understanding between both, and maybe not having the ability to share stories between each other that comes with the understanding
that
on both sides.
Maybe that could be very subjective.
Yeah.
Very, let's say, subjective comment from me. So other people might disagree, but I really think that conflict is good if it's kept healthy. You challenge people with their thinking, right? So I'm not entirely against it, but then sometimes it's not kept healthy, and that's a problem. So
we could get to a space where there's no code or
low code environment.
Yeah.
So I mean,
what does that do for marketers?
So that will bring another level of maturity to the entire marketing industry.
Okay.
The tech guys, right? They know that marketers have to still rely on them, right? And when you look at in this tech industry behind MarTech, there's a huge industry. And why? Because, as mentioned, marketers have a lot of money, right? A lot of budget to spend. And so you have a big spending power. And when you look at this MarTech landscape, a lot of these techs, they are one of the main selling point always is that it's a marketer system, right? They call it a marketer system.
Will that flip?
Yeah.
Is that going to flip as we go for?
No. So that's a double. That is very dangerous, by the way. When you go to the doctor, would you ever ask yourself a question? Do I want to see a doctor who tells me what I like to hear, or who tells me the truth? And I think that with that whole polluted marketing technology industry, they are rather telling marketers what they want to hear, and that is, it's a marketer system, no IT, forget about it. But then once they sign the contract, and then they're like, so what do we do now? And that's the moment of truth, right? So I really argue that we are not yet there where marketers can totally step back and get their hands on the technology without the involvement of tech guys.
Yeah.
Right? But for tech folks as well, it's coming. Guys, find something interesting to do, because this whole thing is coming, and when it happens, then they will no longer need you guys. Right? So
people watching this like, what do I do? Where do I go?
No, but that's the introduction. That's where the link between no code and low code environment comes.
Yeah.
So nowadays, if you're in the conversation between marketing guys and technology guys, and they have to be involved in the same conversation, they have to get involved in the same project, although they may not want it, is because there is an element of coding, there's element of tech piece that both knows is involved.
One of my final questions for today. What do you believe makes a good leader in today's world?
Leadership is a topic that I really value and I really like personally, because it's you could go so deep, and it's partly because it's about human, right? It's about people and the relationship. Leadership is all about that, or at least start from that. I mean, the leader is, at the end of the day, is just another human being who likes to appreciates people and relationship, and who knows his own limitation as well. And a leader knows where he's going, who can visualize clearly at least where the destination is, and then has that sort of charisma to bring other people along with him. And because it's a very tough business, because people have different backgrounds, different motivations, and different purposes. But then, how do you actually put them in the same boat together, right? And I think that's where the toughness comes from. As a leader, they sometimes say, you're nothing but a monster, but a control monster, right? And a control monster is equivalent to a hero, right? So like, and now it's a bit of going in the psychology space, but what's the difference between a monster and a hero? Both are destructive. Both have strengths, and both have, let's say, unique ability to change things. Is the only difference is that a hero changes things in a good way, and maybe a monster changes in the more destructive way, right? And I think the leader has to have that sort of energy, has that drive, has that vibe. It's very hard for that individual to be that way, because everybody is a human,
Yeah.
And another important thing about leader is that you can be always a nice guy, so that everybody goes along with you, and that is not a true leader. You can't be a Mr. Yes all the time. And the other way around as well, you cannot be that leader that everybody is afraid of all the time. They do the job because they're afraid of you, right? So you lead by, you lead by, let's say, fear, right? The sad thing is that you see a lot of unworthy people in sitting in the leadership role, unworthy of their position, by the way. Like, they may be worthy of something else, I don't care, but then we're in the context of leadership, they're unworthy of, incompetent, maybe that might be the better word. But then they get to go ahead, they get away with it for many years as well. And that is the sad part. But then somebody has to pay for the price for their shortcomings. So none of these two worlds represents a leader. I think a leader is so strong. A leader, when I was mentioning about this monster and hero comparison, a leader is a hero here, because he has enough strength to bring chaos if he has to, but he chooses not to. And when he has to, he does that. And that's the leader, right? That's the characteristics that at the core of it you will find. And of course, he brings, when I say he brings in destruction if he has to, doesn't mean that he's also that scary, because he has all the qualities, human qualities of people in him, that even the most junior person in an organization dares to approach him, right? And that's rare, by the way. That's rare. But I hope that you can relate to that character with someone in your mind.
Yeah, I do. I had a boss that was really good in that sense, that anyone could go to her, that anyone could speak to her, but still she was able to manage or overview everything in a way that quick decisions were made. Everyone was being brought along. Everyone was somehow still at the same purpose and still point of a journey. And there was never anything that you didn't feel safe enough to say, even if it was met with, that's not going to work, and here's why. That will work, and here's why. And it's that laser focus. And being able to be human, I think, is the most beautiful part.
I can only speak one topic out of the many, which I hopefully, is one of the most important thing. And that is having the diverse set of thoughts. And, you as a leader, try to constantly look for opportunities to gain and improve that diverse thoughts. Now, a lot of these so-called leaders, and I have been part of that same boat before, I try to find the meaning inside the box all the time. And I don't like to use this word outside the box, because, people abuse it too much. But here, I think maybe most people can resonate better. The way to build diverse thoughts is, it's not where you're not going to find it out of the work you're doing. It's outside, right? So you're like, how much time do you spend outside doing other things meaningfully that you can then bring it back to your work? And then that makes you a whole different leader, right? And so that requires a lot of effort. And I'm happy that I know this truth now, but I should have known earlier. Yeah. And basically I do that very, like, this is pretty much, just to expand a little bit, give you an example, very simple, right? Do you do sports? Do you eat healthy? Do you spend time with people, and so on? And that is what you do. Like, it really is defined by what you do outside the work. Yeah. So, and I think that a lot of leaders, they forget that part.
There's a whole world outside of.
Yes, they forget that part, and that's not to be forgotten. Yeah. And so you can get the diverse thoughts. You can fix a problem that somebody will take 6 months to think about, and not even coming up to conclusion, right? So that's
That's beautiful. Learning outside of yourself.
Yes.
That has come up before, and it's beautiful to hear it, because I don't think you get to hear that a lot, is stepping outside, know that there's a world outside of just the small space that you are, and learn from others, get that diversity in thinking, so that you could bring it all to your team, and bring the magic with that.
Yes, and by the way, if you are a mathematician, this is the old concept, You cannot solve a problem right in front of you. So what you do is you actually solve a different, in the different context, and bring it back to your original problem. So that's the mathematical, sort of solution to this type of problem. But yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. Definitely a tricky one.
To finish this up, I want to ask quickly, if you could give yourself any advice for your future self, what would it be? In one sentence.
Usually I get this question. I know it's going to be more than one sentence. Apologies. let me do two.
Okay, we'll give you two.
Yeah. So people tend to ask me, what would you tell to your 10 years younger version if you have a chance to redo that life again? So that's the kind of question I often get. But now it's like the other way around, where you would tell you. So it's more like reminding yourself, your future self, from here. right? What would you remind? So I thought a lot. I thought about it. And maybe I would say it's something that I know, but I need to remind myself that when in difficult times, you never give up. You have enough evidence in your life that you see, you stay put in all these headwinds and challenges, and you find new meaning out of the brokenness, and that's the most important thing in life. And that is the only ticket for you to get to a better place, right? Because sometimes you might feel like, it's so broken, it's so challenging that you almost you might as well die with it. It's like, but that's the right feeling to have. That's the moment of change, because you're actually leaving your old thinking and your old being behind, and you got to take the new one. You can't take both together. And I'd like to remind myself in the future because I know that I might face situation even more chaotic, right? The bigger the change is, the bigger the reward is.
Oh,
right?
that's
So
beautiful.
That's
Really nice.
Yeah. So I would remind myself to stay put. Right.
That's brilliant. I love that end piece as well. And the fact that you have enough evidence to know that you can still keep pushing through and that you are the scientist of your own reality. Andy, thank you so much for joining us on the Forward podcast. It was such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for giving us your time.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much.